We've been building manhood from fear for so long that most of us have forgotten what strength feels like without it. We call it focus, we call it drive, we call it discipline. But underneath the surface, it's still fear. Fear of being nothing, fear of being unseen, fear of being unchosen. See, the modern man was handed a map that was drawn by his insecurities and told to call it leadership. And for generations, we've obeyed it. We learned very early that softness was shameful and that empathy was weakness and that control, not connection, was proof of masculinity. We mistook suppression for self-mastery. And in doing so, we built an entire culture of men who know how to perform power, but not how to embody peace. Here at Uber Bintegers, we don't whisper about manhood. We want to reclaim it. Integrity for us isn't weakness, and intimacy isn't about submission. These are actually the backbone of real strength, the kind that doesn't need to posture to prove it. So when I say that fear became the blueprint for manhood, I'm not speaking metaphorically. Like, fear literally designed our operating system. Fear of rejection has maybe shaped how we show up in relationships, right? Fear of failure has shaped how we chase after success. Fear of vulnerability has shaped how we hide behind dominance. And from locker rooms to boardrooms, I think most men, we've learned how to speak the dialect, if you will, of defense before we ever learn the language of depth. And we call this ambition. But often it's just trauma of wanting to be enough that's translated now into motion. It's the quiet boy, for example, who grew up without safety, learning to armor himself up with achievements. It's the teenager who is humiliated for crying, who now maybe feels powerful only when he's feared. Or maybe it's the man who confuses silence with stoicism because he's never had his pain met with compassion, instead only correction. We don't like to admit that fear is our foundation, but I think you can see it everywhere. In the manosphere, in the influencers who promise the alpha male status as a cure for humiliation, in the father who hides behind respect because love feels too intimate. See, fear isn't an emotion anymore. It's an economy, and too many of us are still paying the tax, right? And here's maybe what the architecture of this fear looks like. Fear was built, like this empire was built by convincing us that safety only comes from control, and that if we dominate, we won't be dismissed, and that if we stay hard, we won't be hurt, that if we never depend, then we'll never be disappointed. But every time that we buy that lie, we become smaller men in bigger armor. And we trade relational depth for relational dominance, and we call this protection. And we mistake distance for dignity, and we defend the walls that are actually keeping us lonely. See, the manosphere loves to preach that men need to be feared to be respected. But what that really means is, I don't trust myself to be loved without control. And that's the fear blueprint right there. We design our lives around defending against tenderness. We plan careers, our dating strategies, even our friendships around avoiding humiliation of needing anyone. And yet, every honest man knows this. When the noise fades, the armor feels heavy. We're exhausted from pretending indifference. And we crave being known, but we don't know how to stay once we are known. Here's what this evolution of fear looks like. Let's trace it. Generations ago, I think men were rewarded for emotional detachment. War required this. Factory life required it. Survival required it. But somewhere along the way, we forgot to evolve. We kept using survival instincts in relational environments, and we turned emotional shutdown into an identity. So now when a woman asks a man how he feels, he hears danger. And when a friend asks if he's okay, he hears weakness. When a mentor challenges him to slow down, he hears threat. And we can't even receive care now without translating it into conflict. And that's how deep the fear runs. It's no longer protecting us, it's more so directing us. And the scary part, it works. Fear gives results. It builds abs, it builds empires and egos, and it produces income and validation and attention. And the thing is, it also produces isolation, because every time fear wins, intimacy loses. So here's what it looks like to look into this mirror that the manosphere puts up for us. The manosphere didn't invent the fear blueprint. It just digitized it. It turned pain into content and loneliness into marketing, and then it repackaged trauma as truth and called it male empowerment. But what it's really selling is numbness that's disguised as nobility. It tells men, don't trust women, they're gonna use you. Or don't get attached, stay high value, right? Don't feel too much, because emotions make you weak. But here's the truth. Any ideology that asks you to disconnect from your humanity in order to be respected isn't masculinity. That is fear management. And the manosphere thrives on unresolved boyhood pain. It speaks to the boy who felt invisible. And instead of helping him heal, it tells him to become invincible. And invincibility feels good until it doesn't. Until you're sitting alone at 2 a.m. in the morning, scrolling through validation reels that all sound like war cries from men who've forgotten how to rest. Here's fear's disguise: discipline. See, fear's most clever disguise has always been discipline. We're taught to admire the man who wakes up at 4 a.m., who never misses a rep, and who outworks everyone else. But very few ask the harder question: what is he afraid will happen if he stops? Because for many men, slowing down feels like death. Rest feels unsafe. Stillness exposes the pain that we've been running from this whole time. And so we keep grinding, we keep thinking and pursuing consistently, thinking that this will save us. But consistency without consciousness is just another addiction. And that's what fear wants. It wants for us to stay busy enough to never really feel the emptiness. But here's the contrast between integrity versus image, right? Fear's blueprint says be impressive. Integrity, however, says be congruent. And they're not the same thing. One performs, and it performs wholeness, whereas the other one actually builds wholeness. One hides behind the language of confidence, whereas the other one roots itself solidly in honesty. Real men, the kind that we're awakening, are learning to stop managing the optics and start nurturing the origins. We're learning to ask, who am I when no one is watching? Because the truth is, we've had enough of performing toughness to earn proximity. We're done negotiating our humanity just so that we can keep respect. Integrity is really the new rebellion, and intimacy is this revolution as well. Fear and fatherhood, my goodness, what a painful zone. Many of us inherited fear from our fathers, not through words, but through silence. They taught us that emotional expression was feminine and that vulnerability was embarrassing. And they gave us discipline without tenderness and guidance without presence. So we became men who know how to fix everything except our own numbness. We became leaders without intimacy, providers without peace. And now we're trying to parent children who crave what we never received. Attuned, grounded, emotionally safe men. Men who don't punish what they don't understand. Men who know how to love without losing themselves. And that's why this work matters. Because breaking the fear blueprint isn't really about us. It's more so about rewriting the inheritance. But there's a certain courage necessary to confront that fear. Every generation of men has to decide what it's going to normalize. And I think this is our moment. To normalize men who are present, not performative, men who don't need to dominate to feel powerful, men who can cry without collapsing, men who can lead without controlling, men who can listen without retreating. No, we don't need to become less masculine when we stop fearing tenderness. We just need to become more complete, because fear can make us reactive, but only presence makes us powerful. And presence is built on integrity. Not the integrity that's performative or self-righteous, but the kind that makes your insides match your outsides. The kind that actually stops pretending to be confident and now starts practicing congruence. That's the manhood that we're rebuilding here. One where worth isn't in how many people obey us, but how many people feel safe with us. So if this conversation is pressing something in you, that's good. It means you're still alive underneath the armor that you wear. So we're going to go deeper into this kind of excavation in the ashes of the alpha male, a course where we trace how fear turned performance into protection and how we can finally rebuild from presence instead of pain. And it's not about fixing men, it's about freeing them. So the turning point is this. It's the truth I think that we've avoided long enough. And that is that fear made us efficient, but it didn't really make us fulfilled. It gave us trophies, but it didn't give us tenderness. It gave us muscles perhaps, but not meaning. And when a generation of men starts asking, what am I afraid of when I'm not performing? That's when healing begins, not as a trend, not as content, but as culture. See, this isn't a war on masculinity, it's the rebirth of our masculinity, because the strongest man in the room isn't the one who controls the most people. He's the one who can stay rooted when everything in him wants to run. That's what integrity looks like. And that's what intimacy demands. That's what manhood was always really supposed to be. So, in our upcoming episode tomorrow, we're going to go deeper into the illusion that keeps fear alive. Because after fear builds the blueprint, it hides inside what we call strength. So we'll unpack that next, how strength became the mask that we wear to hide our shame. And that's in episode 2, when strength became a mask for shame. So don't miss that episode. But for now, thanks for listening in. Go to my website, uberbintegers.com, and check out that course that I am featuring, the ashes of the alpha male. I'll see you in tomorrow's episode.